Hey guys, it's Tina and I am back. And I am back with a very expensive swatch video for you guys. And it's not the first time I've done an expensive swatch video, let's be honest. My Makeup Forever Epic Swatch Fest was expensive as all get out. And so was my Viseart palette swatch video. Like, who am I kidding, right? Who am I kidding? But this one was a little bit different. It was a leap of faith because these palettes, and I'm talking about the Natasha Denona 28 eyeshadow palettes, that are kind of a craze now here on YouTube, and I try never to fall into these crazes, especially when a palette or a brand or a product just comes out of nowhere. I am always the skeptic because all of a sudden these big YouTubers are doing these videos and I'm like, you got those for free, stop it. You're gonna really tell me that, you know what, nope, not doing it. And I really wasn't gonna do it. Like, people even asked me and I was like, nope, not doing it, not even considering it. And then I saw Tati, Glam Life Guru, here on YouTube, who I love. And if you're looking for someone that does great videos and has consistent content and is not like bought over by different brands, it's her. So check her out. She's really awesome. Like, you're probably already subscribed. But anyway, I saw her do a swatch video and I'm like, yeah, she was like, you know what, they're nice, but not worth it, don't even bother. And I'm like, done. Made up my mind. And then a couple of my viewers, people that I actually trust their opinion, said, no, they're actually pretty good, so you should check them out. And I'm like, crap. And then Beautylish did like a pre-sale where they had a few in stock, like a few hundred really. And they did like this special link, you can get it before everybody else gets it because they're gonna really stock up in March or in February. In March, and then they're gonna get this big shipment in, but right now you can get it with the secret link. And it's Beautylish, and Beautylish's return policy is really good and they have great shipping and everything. So I really like the customer service at Beautylish. So I took the splurge because I knew that if push came to shove and I really hated these, I could return them without much hassle. So I went ahead and took the splurge, and you guys were requesting this video and you were asking me for my opinions and if I was gonna get them, and I took the L. I took the L. You know what? Sometimes I will take the L for you guys because I know they're expensive and a lot of people aren't going to invest in them, but maybe you want to live vicariously through me and you want to really see these palettes. And I did this mainly for you guys. I got both of them. So this is the blue. This one is the green and brown palette. Really pretty. And then this one is the purple and blue palette. And this is the one that I gravitated towards mostly. I'm even wearing a couple of these on my eyes today, and I did a get ready with me video for this look, and I also did a get ready with me video featuring another look from these palettes. So, you know, I'm testing them out and a review will be upcoming, but we're gonna jump into the swatches of these eyeshadows so you can get a feel for them. Again, I don't think you should necessarily jump the bullet and just splurge on these right away. These are quite an investment because the price is, it's $239. Yep, you heard me right. So I really don't think the casual makeup user or a beginner should even consider these palettes. Like, let's be real. This is a splurge, this is a luxury item, this is something that a makeup connoisseur and a makeup lover would really enjoy over somebody that just, you know, dabbles in makeup. So the swatches are still fun to watch, so if you want to see these swatches and see these palettes up close, then let's jump right into it. So let's go ahead and take a look at the overall packaging of the palette. It is an all white patent leather packaging with white stitching. On the front, we have Natasha Denona and a bunch of zeros embossed on the cover. The palette is magnetized, and you'll see those two magnets at the bottom. Those secure the palettes closed. And inside the palette, you will see a clear sheet that is a divider that protects the shadows underneath. And on the top, you have a medium-sized mirror that you can use for makeup application. This packaging is a little bit different because it is layered with foam and hard cardboard versus just cardboard. So the foam in the layering makes it nice for travel, and it protects the shadows inside because it is kind of an included pattern. So traveling with this will be great because it has that foam insert. As you can see right there, there are dual layers of foam. The magnet is pretty secure, but I like to place palettes like these in between something so they hold them securely fastened. The clear sheet on the inside is perforated, so you can remove that if you want. Inside the palette, we have the 28 eyeshadows laid out in 4 rows of 8, and these are square pans and they're laid out on a black background. There are no names associated with these eyeshadows, so you won't see the names printed, and it's not printed on the palette itself either. So if you're a person that likes to have the eyeshadows names handy, you're going to need to keep the box that the palettes come in, because that's the only place that the numbers are actually located. You'll need to keep that handy or make a copy of that and place it inside your palette for easy reference. So the palette we were just looking at was the green brown palette. So now I'm going to give you an up close view of the eyeshadows so you can see them for yourself. So here are the first 2 rows in the palette. Again, this palette is filled with greens, aquamarines, and neutral shades. So if you're into those kinds of shades, then this would be the palette that is right up your alley. On the bottom we have a bunch of different bronzy shades, and we're going to get into the swatches and you're going to see some crossover colors in this palette. And I should mention that there are only about 3 or 4 mattes in the palette, and I'll identify which ones are mattes during the swatches. Also, there are a couple of satin shades in the palette too that really translate as mattes on the skin when you actually swatch them. So let's jump into the swatches. So first up we have the shade 20M True Gold, which is an icy, flaky, light yellow gold shade. It has really good pigmentation, but it's a flaky shade, so be mindful of that. It's going to have a lot of fallout. Next we have the shade 14M Antique Olive, which is an olivey toned kind of old vintage gold shade. Really smooth and has great pigmentation, followed by the shade 10M Aluminum, and this is a really shimmery metallic silver shade. Then we have the shade 15M Bottle Green, which is a dirty forest green shade with shimmer. Well, it's a high metallic sheen. Then we have 16M Emerald Green, which is more of a subdued olive green shade. Next up we have the shade 58V Suede, which is a muted satin yellow brown shade. It has shimmer in it or glitter, but it has like a satin base. Then we have Satin Tan, which is 58P, and that one is more of a sandy brown shade with silver glitter, and there are the first 7 shades. Next row we have the shade 43P Smoky Quartz, which is more of a taupey gray brown shade, followed by the shade 18M Glam Green, which is a taupey silvery shade with a green undertone. Then we have the shade 45M Industrial, which is more of a golden taupe shade. It is definitely a brown with silver undertone. And these 4 shades are very similar. Next we have the shade 21S Cream, which is a satin cream beige shade, followed by the shade 57V Flamingo, which is a matte pinky ivory shade with great pigmentation. Then we have the shade 64V Shell, which is a pinky brown shade, a medium pinky brown. And then we have the shade 78M Umber, which is a golden coppery toned brown shade. And here we have those 7 shades swatched on my arm. Again, you have 4 very similar looking taupey brown shades. They have very slight variation from each other. And you can see all 14 shades of the first 2 rows here swatched on my arm. Again, those very similar shades, and then you have some nice pops of green. Moving on to the 3rd row, we have the shade 44M Indian Gold. This is a almost satin tone light yellow champagne shade. Then we have the shade 08V Tropic, which is a beautiful shade. It's a matte green teal base with yellow gold shimmer. It's really beautiful and it comes off just like that on the skin. Next we have the shade 17M Cloudy Blue, which is another duotone shade. It's a very light blue shade with tons and tons of yellow gold shimmer throughout it, and it's really beautiful. It's like a silvered blue base. followed by the shade 86P Golden Aquamarine, and it's an aquamarine base again with that yellow gold throughout it. So these three shades are like duotones with yellow gold. Next we have the shade 85 Pinija, which is so beautiful. This is like Peacock from Makeup Forever, which is that reddish brown base with that greeny reflect, and it's just really beautiful and it applies really great. Followed by the shade 59M Moonstone, which is a peachy champagne shimmer shade. And then we have 75P Satin Skin, which is kind of a chunkier brown beige shade with a little bit more peach to the undertone. And this row again has great duotones in it and some really great pops of aqua green. The fourth row has the shade 61P Ochre, which is a yellow toned brown, like almost like a bronzy golden bronze shade, followed by the shade 50M Sienna, which is a more high metallic yellow bronze shade or golden bronze shade next to the ochre shade. Then we have the shade 68M Golden Flesh, and this one is again a smoother yellow gold shade, followed by the shade Cool Bronze, which is another, like this one is more of an orangey yellow gold shade. And those four shades are very similar again. So we have the same thing that we had in that second row where we have four very similar shades. Then we have the shade Terracotta, which is 62S, which is a yellow brown shade with yellow gold throughout it, followed by the shade 88V Arizona, which is a orangey tone deep brown shade. It's a really beautiful transition shade. It's a matte finish, followed by the shade 90V, which is another one of the matte shades, and that one is more of a bright burnt orange brown shade. So here are those 7 shades. Again, we have 4 very similar yellow gold bronzy shades and then a couple of mattes in this row. And here's a look at the third and fourth row of that palette. And these 2 rows have more of the aquamarine tones and more of the neutral shades that you'd wear in an everyday look. And here's a look at the 4 rows of the green-brown palette. As you can see, there are lots of neutral shades and some pops of green. Alright, so now let's go ahead and jump into the purple and blue palette, which is of course loaded with different shades of blues and purples, and there are also a bunch of neutrals in this palette as well. So if you favor blue and purple tones, here's the palette for you. So let's take a look at the first 2 rows of shades. Again, there are tons of purples in this palette, but there are also a lot of plum and berry tones. So if you're into cranberry shades and deep burnt plum shades, this palette has a few of those tossed in, as well as a few neutral shades. Now this palette has far more mattes than the green-brown palette, so you're going to see about 5 or 6 mattes in this palette, and again, I'll call them out as I swatch. The first shade we're going to start with is 28V, which is Electric Violet, and this one is a very vivid matte-based violet with silver shimmer throughout it. It's really beautiful and it picks up really well on the skin, and because it has just shimmer in it, it does still translate as a matte on the skin. Then we have 82V, Nina's Orchid, which is more of a red toned orchid purple shade, again with that shimmer. So it has a matte base with silver shimmer throughout it, really pigmented as well. Next we have the shade 51M Rosewood, which is just a rosy bronze shade. Great pigmentation, it's a shimmery shade, followed by the shade 80M Piggy, which is a funny name, but this one is a sheer shimmery champagne shade. You do have to build this up, and it does have a touch of a peachy undertone. It's a really good inner tear duct highlight shade. And then we have the shade 40M Lavender Gray, and this one is another beige shade, a shimmery beige shade, and it has a touch of gray or taupey undertone and a little hint of purple to it. Then we have the shade 11M Metallic Steel Blue, and this is exactly what it says. It's a shimmery steel blue. I wouldn't call it metallic. I shouldn't say it's exactly what it says. It's a shimmery steel blue shade. Then we have the shade 11V Steel Blue, and this one is a matte kind of cement gray shade with a hint of blue to it. So you see that blue undertone, but it's a matte gray shade. And here you have the first set of shades. You have some neutrals, some purples, and some pops of blue and gray here. Next, in the second row, we have 38M Gray Brown. And this one is a taupey beige or brownish shade. It's a very shimmery shade, good for neutral looks, followed by 24V Aubergine. And this one is a matte, deep plum shade. It's almost like a reddened brown shade, but it has a lot of berry to it. Then we have the shade 22M Maroon, which is a shimmery version of the 24V that we just did, Aubergine. This one is a shimmery plum shade, followed by the shade 60M Golden Rose. And this one, you've seen this before. This is just a shimmery peachy pink shade. It's a duochrome shade with gold reflex, followed by the shade 63M Oxide. This is an orangey tone bronze or a copper shade, followed by the shade 84V Powder Blue. And this is a matte powder blue shade. It looks great on my skin tone and picked up pretty well. Then we have the shade 09M Quicksilver, and this is just a deep, dirty gunmetal silver shade with a touch of shimmer to it. And here you have the first two rows of shades, and there are berries here, there are purples, there are gray tones, there are silver tones, and there are a ton of neutrals in these rows as well. Moving on to the third row, we have 32P Deep Slate Gray, and this one is just a gray tone deep brown shade with shimmer. Then we have 75P Satin Skin, and this one is a light beigey shimmery shade, again another neutral, followed by the shade 52M Golden Beige, and this one is more of a yellow golden beigey shade, and it has beautiful shimmer and applies beautifully. Then we have the shade 70P Cool Plum. I don't know where the plum is, but this one is just a warm tone neutral brown shade. This one takes some building up. It's more of a satin finish, but it does take some building up for good pigmentation. Then we have the shade 92M Petrol Blue, and this one is a deep like ocean type blue shade with shimmer, followed by the shade 89V Cowtoe. I may be butchering that, but that's just a matte sky blue shade, followed by the shade Deep Pacific, which is just a dirty, it's almost like a gray shade or a silver shade with a tealy undertone. It's a really interesting color for a smoky eye. So here we have the third row of shades. Again, we have neutral shades and blue tones in this row. Moving on to the fourth row, we have 12M Glaze, which is a very icy, shimmery champagne shade. Takes a little layering up, but it's a beautiful highlight shade, followed by the shade 23P Smoky Plum. And this one is a deep purpley plum shade with shimmer. It's a beautiful smoky color again, followed by 49M Vintage. This one is just a taupey beige shade or a deep brown beige shade. And then we have the shade Calypso Blue, which is 05M. This one is a duochrome shade. It has a reddish brown base with an aquamarine silvery duochrome to it. It's a really beautiful shade, followed by the shade 65V Smoke, which is just a matte slate gray shade, or even like a smoky black shade almost, because it's not completely black, it's like a gray shade with shimmer. Then we have the shade 04M Chromatic, which is a flaky, very icy, very metallic, very shiny foil silver shade. And then the last shade is 01 Navy, which is just a matte deep navy shade. The shimmer you see there is from the glitter from the chromatic shade, so just imagine it without the shimmer because that is just a matte navy shade. And here's a look at the fourth row of shadows in that palette. And I'll give you a look at the third and fourth rows swatched on my arm again so you can see all those shades. Again, we have very neutral shades. We have some blues tossed in and some different varying colors of neutral. And here's a look at all four rows swatched on my arm. And again, it's a neutral palette with varying shades of blue and some purples tossed in. So that will finish up our swatches. Alright guys, so hopefully those swatches were helpful for you. Even if you don't get this palette, I just think swatches are fun to watch and to see what the palette really has in store if you were considering it. If it's something that you would truly invest in, it's good to see swatches to see if, oh, should I just jump the gun and really splurge on this item? So hopefully this video was helpful for you. Again, I'm going to do a review video after I test these out some more. I've tested a couple of them, and quick thoughts, I think they're nice. I think they apply really nicely. I think they blend really nicely. I think the best part about them is that they're really pigmented and you don't need a lot of product to get the pigmentation. And I think if you do splurge on them, they're not a waste of money. Like, it's not like, oh my god, you just wasted your money on crap. Like, you're getting good quality eyeshadows here. But again, it's a big splurge. So I don't necessarily think it's worth the price point. And we can break down the price point. At the end of the day, if you really calculate it out, yes, there is some value here, but to spend that much on a single palette is kind of crazy. And I'm crazy, and I took the L again for YouTube and for you guys. So I like them. I really like them, but I would really like to spend less on them. Does that make sense? So I'm gonna continue testing them out, and then I'll give you my thoughts in a future video. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.